Welcome, Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius. I am John Ledyard from pewterreport.com on a wonderful Wednesday morning. Great to be back with you. We have turned over a new leaf, and Scott Reynolds is here to officially do it with me. We're done with the loss. We're moving on to the Giants game in Week 11, Bucs against Giants, Monday Night Football, and hoping that this team fares a little bit better in primetime when they're at home, Scott, as opposed to when they're on the road. Well, let's get into this one, man. I'm excited. This is going to be a low-key kind of maybe a closer game than Bucs fans want it to be, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Listen, as Emily points out, yes, the Bucs are 6-3, very much in it, still on top of the NFC South. We're not going to be, too negative on this show by any means. But I think the thing is I'm a little concerned about this game, and I'll tell you why. If you go back and look, Daniel Jones beat the Buccaneers in 2019 at Raymond James Stadium. Okay, now what happened 2 years ago doesn't have any bearing necessarily on what happens in 2021, other than the Giants, led by Daniel Jones, they have a win in this building. They're not going to be intimidated, especially when last year at New York on Monday Night Football, the Giants led that game at several points in the first quarter. Actually, at halftime, it was 14-6. They had a lead at the end of the third quarter, and it wasn't until the fourth quarter that the Buccaneers took over the lead and then hung on to it. It took an Antoine Winfield Jr. pass breakup on a 2-point conversion, John, in the end zone, a hero play by the rookie at that point in time on a pass intended for Dion Lewis, who had a touchdown earlier in that game on Devin White, to win that game 25-23. So I want to believe that the Buccaneers are Jekyll and Hyde. I want to believe that they are this magical team that's undefeated at home, that are going to come out and live up to their 40.5 points per game average at Raymond James Stadium, which is a stark contrast from the 23-point efforts on average that they score on the road. That's a 17-point differential home and away. But I just don't believe after this 2-game losing streak where there was some warts exposed a little bit, that they're going to come home and magically flip the switch against a Giants team that says, hey, we have played with you guys toe-to-toe the last 2 years. We're supposedly not that good. You're supposedly really good. But we barely beat you in 2019. You barely beat us last year. I think this is going to be a closer game than people want to believe it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, even the odds that Bucs are 11-point favorites right now. That's kind of crazy to me. I mean,
that's crazy.
11-point favorites. I mean, it's Wednesday. I mean, that's just a lot of points. You don't see lines that big, period, let alone the Bucs coming off 2 losses. The Giants have played obviously better lately. We'll talk about that in a second. There's lots to get into with this one. We're also going to talk about Larry Foote's comments today and some of Bruce Arians' comments too. And just in general, we'll kind of touch on some things that have happened this week. But of course, we got to shout out our title sponsor who brings you this podcast today, our friends over at Celsius. Celsius powers active lives every day with essential functional energy. Saw somebody say, what did they say they were rocking? What, watermelon?
Sparkling watermelon. Yes.
Sparkling watermelon.
That's his favorite.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's I got blueberry pomegranate here. That's one of my favorites. The Celsius Heat. The Heat. Definitely one of my top choices. But yeah, Celsius, I mean, the great thing about them, unbelievable taste and flavors. You can see a bunch of the flavors up here on the screen there with wild berry, which I just got some, actually came in the mail yesterday. There's the sparkling orange. There's a lot of kiwi guava. I got tropical vibe going into the fridge later tonight. There's a lot of different flavors, and they're all really good, and there's no sugar in any of them, and they won't make you crash either like other energy drinks. They'll sustain you. They'll pick you up. They'll give you the energy you need to get done whatever you're trying to get done during the day. And they're good for you too. I mean, they accelerate metabolism, burn body fat, all those things. So make sure you check out Celsius.com. Use the store locator to find out where they are near you, or click the banner ads over at pewterreport.com as well. And you can get yourself some Celsius that way.
Check out those new banner ads on pewterreport.com, right? I mean, I think everybody that watches our podcast visits pewterreport.com for their Bucs news. If you don't, you should, right? I mean, that's just,
we got like 10 stories up there today.
Exactly. It's been a very busy day. We've had a very busy traffic day, a lot of news we're going to get to in just a second before we get to our Bucs Giants preview, John. But click on those Celsius banners to make it really easy to find where you can get Celsius in your area and order it too. So brand new Celsius ads. Click on those, and they will hook you up with the details you need to get Celsius in your body.
That's great. Love it. Okay, let's talk about these Larry Foote comments today. Larry Foote is some really, I think, just surprising comments. In fact, I'm going to read the full quotes of what he said so I don't misquote him. But the line of questioning.
You're talking about Larry Foote, who is the outside linebackers coach for the Buccaneers, and a guy who is very well thought of inside the building.
In fact, you published another Larry Foote story earlier today, right? That he was mentioned as a possible. He was on a very long list. We should have an extremely long list of honorable mention up and coming young coaches in the league that could potentially be looked at as future head coaches. Obviously, he probably would need coordinator first, but this was his quote. He was asked specifically about Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Jason Pierre-Paul, the situation there as the outside linebackers coach. Why Jason Pierre-Paul maybe isn't playing more why Joe Tryon-Shoyinka isn't playing more snaps at this point. He said, "You've got to start with the paychecks first," Foote said. "The guy with the biggest paychecks, they play the most. It's fortunate to get drafted with two guys like that," speaking of Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, "and it's going to pay off in the long haul as far as his career." He went on to say, "I'm quite sure on probably over half the other teams in the league, he'd probably be a starter," Foote said, "but he has to wait his turn like a lot of guys. His fault was he's joking about this. His fault was being drafted 32 and not top 5 or 10 or top 10. We're going to try to get him a lot of snaps. He needs to just keep learning. When that opportunity calls, he'll seize it," which he has earlier in the season when he played when Jason was out. So he's doing a good job. I'm happy with his play. Obviously happy with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, but my biggest gripe here, Scott, is the process saying the biggest paychecks play the most.
That's not good.
I don't know that that's even a universally, like, I've not noticed that actually being a thing with the Bucs. That's the more important part, but it's a weird quote.
Yeah. When I heard that today, I immediately thought of back in 2007, the Bucs drafted Gaines Adams in the first round. Now, he wasn't a 32nd overall pick. I think he was the 7th overall pick, right? So he was a top 10 guy, kind of like what Larry Foote was saying, right? Like, if you're drafted that high, you're going to play. But I remember back that year, this is Monty Kiffin's defense, and Greg Spires was still playing for the Buccaneers.
I remember him.
Yeah, so he came to Tampa Bay in 2002. They called him the Crane because he did all the heavy lifting. Got a sack in the Super Bowl. He was that kind of workman-like bookend to Simeon Rice. Simeon Rice was the Lamborghini, the sports car, right? The 15.5 sacks and bringing the heat on third down. Greg Spires took on the double teams, the point of attack in the run game, and was workman-like. They call him the Crane because of that heavy lifting. Got a couple sacks during the Super Bowl season, including one in the Super Bowl. And, he just was a blue-collar, lunch pail kind of guy, the kind of guy coaches love, right? And because they can trust them. And I think that the problem universally, not just in Tampa, but universally in football, especially at the NFL level, John, is coaches love veteran guys because they can trust them. They're battle-tested. They've been in the wars, in the trenches with them. And it's hard sometimes to let go and play the new guy because as a coach, you're so afraid of, well, if I put this guy in, he's going to make a mistake. Rather than looking at the positive and saying, hey, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is like perfectly healthy and really young and really athletic and really fast, and he's the future. He can also be the present. He needs to be in there and play half the snaps, especially with Jason Pierre-Paul really laboring with a rotator cuff injury.
Right.
So my point is, back in 2007, I remember talking to Mark Dominic, who was in Bruce Allen's front office at the time as a pro personnel director, and I said, why aren't you playing Gaines Adams more? Listen, Kevin Carter's playing, and he was the old veteran too, but you're also playing Greg Spires, who at age 33 was a shell of his former self.
Yeah.
That year, Spires had 2 sacks. Started 8 games. They finally played Gaines Adams, and to Gaines' credit, he finished with 6 sacks, which was most on the team that year, and really kind of came on. Now he plateaued and was never really developed. He never really lived up to his draft hype, and they ended up trading him to Chicago a couple years later. But in 2007, Gaines Adams was the best pass rusher they had, and they didn't find that out till they finally played him. And I remember Mark saying, it's in the NFL, it's a little bit of a war, right? During the season, because the front offices, the scouts, the personnel guys, they want to see the draft picks play, right? That's why you draft them. Right. but the coaches resist that. They want to stick with their old warriors. And sometimes that's the right call. Other times it's just not.
Right. And I don't think that Pierre-Paul is like totally ineffective or should be out of the rotation. We've said that. We just think that it should be more of a snap share and not Tryon-Shoyinka playing 19 snaps and Pierre-Paul playing, 70% of the snaps.
Right.
Like that's where it breaks down for me. So we'll see. I just don't more than even the specific situation, which obviously, Foote only has so much control over, it's ultimately probably Bull's decision with the defense. I just don't like the philosophy in general. I don't like even if it's subconscious. Well, obviously now it's conscious. He's vocalized it.
Don't say it.
I don't like that way of
bad
thinking.
Luck.
Yeah, like I don't even putting that out there about your team. Like, people know I'm the last person to go crazy about this kind of stuff, but the idea is just wrong. Like, that's not the culture Arians has created. And to be honest, like I said, it's not the culture I've seen either. Like, I'm trying to even think. We haven't probably reached that point because the Bucs are such a. I mean, they're young players. I mean, they still had young players that have played. I mean, their whole secondary was all on rookie contracts last year when they won a Super Bowl. So I don't know that it's necessarily actually happening in Tampa Bay, other than maybe this JPP Tryon-Shoyinka situation. I do think the Bucs coaches, Scott, for whatever reason, they believe that JPP gives them this mystical energy, which he clearly does give energy and leadership and vocal leadership on the field that they just don't want to play without. And I don't think that it isn't valuable, but I don't think it's as valuable as they think it is. Like, sacks are more valuable. One-on-one pass rush wins are more valuable.
Sacks, and just like Larry Foote said, hey, 5 sacks are great, but we need those sacks to come on third down because that's when sacks matter the most, is when you get off the field due to a sack or a sack fumble. But John, I agree with you. And I think the thing is with Larry Foote, and listen, he's a good coach and all that stuff. There's a reason why Jason Pierre-Paul makes $12.5 million this year. He made the Pro Bowl last year. He had a really good year. And I would suspect Jason Pierre-Paul, the healthy version of him, would have a hell of a lot more than 2 sacks right now, or 2.5 sacks and a forced fumble, and be a more impactful player. But the reality is he's not. The reality is he's going to be 33 next year. And I'm not saying he's going to be a lock to return to Tampa. What I do know is Joe Tryon-Shoyinka will be probably a starter next year. And the more, he better be. And the more you can get him ready for next year by giving him experience this year, the better.
Right. And interesting quote too from Bruce Arians on Bucs Total Access, and we're gonna have a story on this later. We're gonna have a story on this later at Pewter Report. But he said when he was asked by Casey Phillips about Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul's performance, and she said they had 5 sacks. We had 5 sacks as a team, and neither of those guys had one. What were your thoughts on their performance? By the way, Casey Phillips asked so many tough questions, and I just think it's so good. Like, team reporters that do that are just so few and far between. So Bucs Total Access, must listen. But Arians was just like, I thought it was their poorest performance of the season. I expect a lot more. And you and I know that. Like, we talked about that in the post-game pod. But I just like Arians' transparency. Obviously, as a media member, it's great. We talk about I talk about this with other team media people all the time. It's obviously great for us and for our jobs for sure. But more than anything, like, how do players respond to that now? And I think like players have always loved Arians despite his bluntness. That shows the rapport he has with them to be able to say things like that. But it also, they need to step up. Like, those guys need to play better. And this is a huge opportunity to do so against the Giants this week. So let's dive into this one, Scott.
I agree. Now, hold on. Let's start right there if we can, because it's a great segue to sticking with Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett, who Shaq, said he's been very disappointed the last 2 games in his play. He has to look in the mirror and listen. Sometimes the money can get to you. And I'm not saying that's the case with Shaq, but I've talked to enough players in the locker room. And unfortunately, we can't get in the locker room because of COVID. But I'm just saying.
Everybody, that dude, he's different. Like, he didn't even hit free agency, Scott. He didn't even care. He just wants to play football.
He does.
I honestly believe this. I know that fans take this easy narrative because like they're mad sometimes and they lash out. You are never going to have like a money situation with Shaq Barrett. Like, he's a unique dude.
Listen,
this, right?
I'm not saying he's coasting, right? I'm not saying he's taking that route. Sometimes what I'm thinking is you can put too much pressure on yourself because of the price tag, because you feel the weight of the world, like you're letting your team down, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to, hey, I'm a starter, I got to go out there and play. It's another thing that's like, damn, like this team gave me the franchise tag last year, rewarded me with a $17 million contract, $17 million per year contract on average. I got to play. And sometimes sometimes that pressure can get to a player positively, right? Like I expect Shaq to have a really, really good game on Monday. Yeah. Sometimes, and maybe it was the last couple of weeks, you feel that pressure where like you're out there trying, and sometimes it's just not your day, man. We've all had that day, whether it's working any line of work or out there on the football field. Sometimes you show up and it just not your day, right? Yeah. And I think that was kind of how it was with Shaq on Sunday. It wasn't for lack of effort. I don't think that he was coasting or anything like that. But sometimes that money can weigh on a player within the same season, good and bad. And I think we've seen the bad, and I think maybe we'll see the good. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Shaq just doesn't even care about it, not even thinking about it. But I'm just saying sometimes that can be a factor, but I expect him to bounce back. And John, you and I both said against Washington, an injured Sam Cosmi, the rookie, Charles Leno Jr., not the gangbusters, left tackle he was against when he was playing for the Bears. But both those guys really showed up and did a number on JPP and on Shaq. Anthony Nelson had the best day with 4 tackles and a sack on 17 snaps. But now it's a different story. You've got Andrew Thomas, the left tackle on injured reserve. Matt Parrott, he
was activated by the way today, a couple hours ago.
Thomas,
I just looked that up right now, but I don't think. Usually players are a little bit. Yeah, we'll see if he plays. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe he will.
But I think it's going to be Parrott at left tackle, who's given up 3 sacks this year,
and he's struggling.
Yeah, and speaking of struggling, right? I mean, nobody struggled more on that offensive line than Nate Solder, who is a shell of his former self at age 33, giving up 3 sacks, 27 pressures this year. He has been a bit of a revolving door. So this could be the game where Shaq and JPP, let me rephrase that. This should be the game where Shaq and JPP get right in the sack column. And if not, Joe Shoyinka, gets a legitimate sack or 2. The one he had last week counted, but it wasn't that legitimate, was it?
Right. Yeah. He's hardly getting any opportunities really, but to rush that much. But yeah, he was in coverage a little bit more again the other night. I don't know if his usage this season, unless somebody gets hurt, is going to lend itself to high sack numbers. I mean, he might get 5 or 6 by the end of the year, but it might look like the ones the other night just because they're just not using him in a way that to me best fits his skill set. So, but yeah, you mentioned Solder and Pert. I mean, this is matchups that Tampa Bay really should win. Thomas was playing a lot better actually in his second season. I know after everybody was clowning the Giants, and I still think the Giants obviously made a mistake passing on Tristan Wirfs. Yeah. I actually had Jedrick Wills higher too. I had Wills and Wirfs above Andrew Thomas and Mekhi Becton, but he's been hurt all year.
Thomas is the 4th offensive tackle. In the class. Yeah, and
I had him as an early second round grade actually, which is like a very good starter grade to me. So like what he's played at this year is more what I expected, not the disaster that was last year. So he's looked better when he's played, but again, the injury now, and we don't know whether he's going to play this week. Pert is struggling on the left side. He was right tackle in college, so that transition for him has been tough. Oddly enough, Solder's been a left tackle his whole career. I don't know why they don't just flip
He's just
him,
slow. I think that's the thing, John.
Solder's just about done. I think
he is.
It's in, but they paid him the money, so here we are. And the interior's okay, but it's not great either, Scott.
I think with the right tackle, it's easier to help out with the back on that side or a tight end to chip, right? So I think that's why you've got the younger, more athletic Pertz on the left side, 6'7". He's got a decent wingspan. I liked him a little bit as a developmental tackle coming out of UConn, but the footwork still needs.
He's actually okay at right tackle last year.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
feels like they should flip those guys, like Solder back to the left and Pert back to the. But hey, keep them the same this week.
That's right.
This is going to be a one where although the numbers aren't that bad for the Giants in terms of sacks that they've allowed the season. They've been Daniel Jones or whoever's been a quarterback has been sacked 20 times this year, tied for 16th in the NFL. So it's not great numbers for sure, but it's not like disastrous numbers like we've seen in the past. And they're also avoiding turnovers a little bit better. Lately it's picked up again, but Jones start the year was avoiding turnovers really well. Now they're up to 11, which is 20th in the NFL, but that's still one less, what the Bucs have, 12 turnovers this year. So I don't know. I think that's the turnover number is one that you could see start to go the south for the Giants. Like Daniel Jones larger sample size suggests he won't be the player who protected the ball better the first 5-6 games of the year, and he will be the player who puts the ball in harm's way more often than not. And I'll look up some turnover worthy stat throw numbers for him in a second, but that is where this one gets kind of interesting to me, is if the Giants, because they have not run the football well all year, whether Barkley's been in or out, and I think he's still banged up. I think he's questionable. He's coming off the bye, obviously, but that hasn't really been a big part of their offense this season. Rushing volume has been okay, I guess, but they've run for about 96 yards per game. That's 25th in the NFL, but they're only averaging 3.9 yards per attempt.
Daniel Jones accounts for almost 30 of those yards on a weekly basis.
There you go. So, I mean, him scrambles and things like that is a big part of this. So they have not run the ball well at all. So the Giants, it really all starts with what they're able to do in the passing game and what they're able to do defensively. And that's what they came into the season kind of hoping for, especially as Barkley was hurt pretty early on. And it hasn't really materialized. Daniel Jones is, like I said, not taking maybe as many sacks or turnovers. He also hasn't taken the leap either. And then he got banged up and hasn't been the same since he's been, healthy again. So that was where their offense kind of starts, and it's never really gotten going. And I feel like Jason Garrett is one of the worst offensive coordinators in the NFL. And so there's just not a lot in place to help Jones. And I am not sure what the Giants do well enough to be afraid of in terms of the Bucs defense.
With you, John.
That also might not matter.
You're right. And if you go back to last year, let's answer Hezo 813's question here. John and Scott, if the Bucs lose this game, being at home and on a 3-game slide, is it time to panic? I would say yes, definitely.
If they lose 3 games in a row, and all 3 to teams
Giants.
All 3 to teams that look at the same schedule, man, they might not make the playoffs. Like,
I know
if the Bucs lose 3 games the Saints, if they make it, are going to be like a 10-7 type team, a 9-8, like it's going to be that type of 6-7 seed situation, I think, because their schedule is just hard. They have, and I know they're well coached, but when you don't have a quarterback position and they just dropped 2 in a row, they're tougher games ahead than the ones they've just played, in my opinion. I think it's
if you remember last year, John, up in New York, the Bucs were in for a bit of a surprise because the Giants came out in a lot of 12, even some 13 personnel, and they ran the ball pretty effectively, right? They averaged 4.2 yards per carry. And, Wayne Gallman was the leading rusher, 44 yards. He had a touchdown in that game. And the Giants ran for 101 yards, which that's surprising against the Bucs, who, average giving up around 70 or so per game. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if they tried that approach again, because the more you run the ball, if you have some success with it, that's less opportunities for Daniel Jones to throw interceptions like he gifted the Bucs twice last year, and also less opportunities for him to get sacked.
Right. Here's some interesting stuff about the Giants. They lost 5 of their first 6 games to start the season. They've won 2 of the last 3, and they've beaten 2 teams with, I guess the Panthers are 500. They crushed the Panthers 25-3. That was a complete Sam Darnold collapse game. He was atrocious in that game. Then they barely lost to the Chiefs. Obviously, the Chiefs are struggling, but still, that's a good offense, and they held them in check most of the game. Really kept the Chiefs from doing a lot of good things in that game. That was a really ugly win for the Chiefs. Then they went and they beat the Raiders, who are 5-3 or 5-4 or something like that now. And here's the wild part about this game. You see the final score, 23-16. You're like, wow, the Giants defense has really turned it around. They're dominating. They had a couple weeks where they got like 38 plus points put on them in a row. If you look down a little bit further, the Raiders had 403 yards in this game, Scott, and they went 1 for 6 in the red zone. I don't know if I have ever seen 1 for 6 in the red zone. That's atrocious.
I think when you're looking at 1 and 6 in the red zone, it's as much of your own meltdown as it is
because clearly you have the ability to move the ball. And it doesn't mean the Giants didn't make some plays, but you probably got yourself pretty good not getting in the end zone. Not winning a game where you rake the red zone 6 times. Yeah. That's pretty crazy. So, and the Raiders had 3 turnovers, and I think some of those were in the red zone too. So that's a big part of this as well. There was a pick 6 in this game that gave the Giants. So Giants offense, what I mean to say by saying all this is that offensively, they really, because that's where we're looking right now, they really have not gotten it going. They had 245 total yards in this game.
Right.
Like that's it for the game. And that was one of their wins this season. And obviously the Chiefs defense has been atrocious and the Giants barely could move the football against them, 17 points in that game.
Right.
Again, a game where they struggled to run the football. It just has not been, they've not been able to get it going and do anything consistently productive. In fact, the most exciting part of the Giants offense so far this year has been when Kadarius Toney has played, their rookie first round pick. He's 352 receiving yards this year, but he's also been hurt a lot. I think he's probably I think he's going to play in this game. Let me see if there's an update. I was hoping we'd get an injury report before this podcast.
I mean, he's played in 8 games this year and he leads the Giants with 28 catches, 352 yards in terms of he's second on the team behind Sterling Shepard in terms of catches, but 352 yards leads the Giants, still waiting for his first touchdown. He's also a threat for some of those reverses and end arounds.
Yep.
He hasn't been too successful, 3 attempts for only 6 yards, but he's just a gadget type guy in the backfield. And I think that the one thing that we do need to talk about is, and this goes right into your point, John, if the Giants are going to have a chance in this game, they've got to make it a slugfest. They've got to make it a low-scoring slugfest because that's the type of games they've had some success in this year. And if you go back to last year, the Buccaneers outscored the Giants 10-6 in the fourth quarter, but they only scored 15 points through the first 3 quarters. So this was the type of game the Giants had a chance to win because they were able to get it to the fourth quarter. Now the Bucs prevailed 25-23, but we would be remiss. And again, I will reserve judgment to see if the Bucs are going to continue to score an average of 40 points per game at home. But the one thing that's encouraging, John, that speaks to your point about the Giants' offense struggling, is at least Tampa Bay's defense has done a really, really good job at home too. That's kind of been overshadowed by how prolific this offense has been. But if you go back and look, they surrendered 29 points to Dallas in week 1, 25 points to the Falcons in week 2. The next time they were at home was against Miami, 17 points, and then 3 points. So they have given up fewer points each single time that they've taken the field at Raymond James Stadium. So I think that the Giants have scored more than 3 points. I think they're better than the Bears. But the Bucs have done a really good job of keeping opponents under 20 points per game the last 2 times they've been at home. And, they let Atlanta get in there a little bit, but but they pulled away in the second half,
Right.
really the fourth quarter, but those 2 pick sixes by Mike Edwards.
Yeah. Some breaking news that just dropped. The Bucs announced they have placed Richard Sherman on injured reserve. Not necessarily unexpected. I think we both kind of expected that one. Now with Sherman on injured reserve, all attention will turn to the potential return of Sean Murphy-Bunting.
Yeah.
Here's the situation with Sean Murphy-Bunting, and Bruce Arians clarified this for us today. He doesn't need to be activated before the Giants game. Same thing with Scotty Miller. They don't need to be activated before the Giants game. They could still be activated on Tuesday, the day right after. That's their 21st day, I believe, is that Tuesday right after the Giants game. So the Bucs intentionally activated them with that day in mind, I think, in case they weren't ready for the Giants game, in case there was a setback in practice or things going along a bit slower than they thought with the recovery. They could wait out the Giants game, activate them on Tuesday, get them another week of practice and recovery, and then maybe they play or maybe they're inactive for the week after if there was a real setback, and then the Colts game and then the Falcons game, December 5th, they play in that game maybe. That was just kind of the precaution. It sounds like everything is on schedule for the two of them, and I think the date that they envisioned all along, if everything went well, was this one, the Giants game. And this, the reason they activated them was just in case they had that day to go to and say, okay, we're going to activate you on Tuesday, move you to the active roster, cut whoever we need to cut, and we'll have another week to get you ready. Smart by them to plan it out that way. I believe as long as everything goes okay, that Sean Murphy-Bunting will return, Scotty Miller will return. We'll see about everybody else. Cameron Peralta mentioned in the chat here, I believe, that Antonio Brown had an Instagram post that said something about returning in New York or something like that with a
he had a music.
Yeah, something like that, where he was talking about a catch in New York or something. See if I can find the comment maybe. But yeah, I mean, we'll see if he's back. Obviously, that's a part of this too. We'll talk about the Bucs offense in a second. But
you mentioned Sean Murphy-Bunting, and in that game, we saw the best and worst of Sean Murphy-Bunting, right? Daniel Jones threw a ball right to him, and to Sean Murphy-Bunting's credit, he caught it.
Yeah.
But then he also gave up that last minute touchdown in the fourth quarter to Golden Tate in the end zone. And,
it's been, that's Sean Murphy Bunting in a nutshell.
Little feast or famine there against the Giants.
Yeah, somebody tweeted at me like, "Hey, why are you talking about Sean Murphy Bunting's potential return? Is that even helpful?" I'm like,
it depends.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping he's better than D. Delaney looked the other night, because Delaney looked pretty brutal, but maybe not. So we'll have to see. But the Bucs corner situation becomes really significant all of a sudden, right, Scott? Because you've got Jamel Dean who again reverted back to a dismal Jamel Dean game the other day, which we just basically expect at this point. Every 3 good games there'll be an absolute head scratcher. And then Ross Cockrell was basically benched in the last game, played 9 snaps. Mike Edwards played in the slot almost all last game. What most of the plays down the field were pretty much all of them were Dean and Delaney. There wasn't really a lot of.
You got to think that unless Murphy Bunting does play in this game, I mean, Bleedy Ray Wilson's got to come up.
Oh yeah, he's probably coming up regardless, right? Yeah, they need a 5th because Delaney and Sherman are both down now. Delaney's probably not going to get out of protocol. By the way, got the video. I'm going to tweet it out later. Devin White just absolutely blasted D. Delaney. 3rd time this year that he's just wrecked one of his teammates.
I know.
mean, it's brutal. But Delaney's like literally sprawled out on his back, like just completely cooked. So anyway, that's the Bucs corner situation right now. Literally the only 3 guys healthy right now.
And if you remember, Jamel Dean didn't play that well against the Giants.
He played horrible like that. We should talk about that actually.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen a guy give up so many double moves in one game and nothing on the stat sheet. Like after the game, you're just like, oh, Dean had a good game. He gave up like 5 yards. He literally could 3 times. They could have got him for like 80-some yard touchdowns.
Yeah.
And Daniel Jones didn't hit any of them. Dudes were wide open,
and
didn't hit any of them. That game should have absolutely been a loss. Yeah. But the Bucs also played horrendous football. So I mean, that was probably. I
think the headline, John, was games. Escape from New York, which if you're as old as me, you remember the John Carpenter movie with Snake Plissken, or Pilskin, whatever his name was, played by Kurt Russell. It was a classic 80s action movie, Escape from New York. So
and that was the Bucs situation. That's literally
and they did Escape from New York. I mean, that was an escape. 25-23. Yeah.
If Daniel Jones had been semi-competent, that game would have been a loss. But he was atrocious. Like you mentioned, the picks. The Carlton Davis pick was also pretty ugly. I missed a ton of touchdowns. Yeah, that was probably one of his worst games. Brady didn't play that well either. O-line didn't play that well. Yeah. I thought it's really weird play calling in that game. The Bucs had a ton of opportunities down the field in this game, and this was the matchup, right? As we transition to the offense, Mike Evans and James Bradbury. When I came to the beat, y'all told me Mike Evans has struggled over the years against James Bradbury. Yeah. This tape, I don't even know what Mike Evans' final stat line was in this game. But this was a great tape for Mike Evans. He beat up James Bradbury pretty good. I know the numbers.
5 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown.
And to be honest, Brady missed him a couple times in this one. This was one where they wanted a few back because Evans not that he didn't throw to him. He threw to him. It just they couldn't quite connect. There was a couple just barely off of defenders, underthrown a little bit, or if this would have been like end of the year Bucs offense, I think they would have been absolutely cooking. And and Bradbury's not having as good a year this year either.
Yeah, he's not. He's still making some plays. His Pro Football Focus grade is not as high. PFF has him as the 10th best defender on the Giants. If you take out the guys who played 1 game or 3 games and stuff, he moves up to around 6th. Yeah. But really, the guy in the secondary that's playing really well, Xavier McKinney, the former 2nd-round pick out of Alabama, they're strong safety. He's playing great in coverage. He's playing great in run support. Statistically, he's checking some boxes that the Giants need to have checked. He essentially replaced Landon Collins, and he's got 4 interceptions to lead the team so far. The pass breakups have been there with 7, so he's getting around the ball. He's got a pick 6 on the season, 46 tackles. And the other guy, too, Adoree Jackson, who was cast off from Tennessee, 52 tackles, 5 pass breakups. And Bradbury, he's been targeted now, right? He's been targeted. He's got 10 pass breakups, but he does have 3 interceptions. So, he was Mike Evans' kryptonite until last year. And I think Evans was glad to be able to put up a touchdown and get some production on him. I'm sure Bradbury wants to revert back to the way things were in Carolina, where he did a really good job on Mike Evans. But that's going to be a matchup to watch for sure.
Yeah, it is. And it feels like PFF grades for corner are always like flipping around. Bradbury has recovered from a rough start to this early in the season, but corners are rarely stable on there. And his grade's definitely worse than last year. But yeah, I mean, Leonard Williams, obviously their best player, defensive tackle. Dexter Lawrence is a good one. They have great run stuffers inside. I think this is going to be one of the games, Scott, where the Bucs revamped run approach is going to really aid them. I don't know how much they'll run the football.
Some outside runs?
Yeah, I'm talking about some outside runs, using outside zone. Last year when they played teams with great defensive tackles, they just kept running duo and trying to double team those guys and run it up the gut. And it just was silly. They wasted so many plays against the Giants. Right? It was such a waste of time. And now they've got a scheme that gets away from that stuff a little bit more with how much more diverse they are, kind of creating angles on those D tackles, letting blockers fold and get a pull and go down the field. And I think it's really conducive for these types of matchups. The Giants have not been good against the run, by the way, at all this year. And I think it's because of that. They have that one strength, but once teams figure out how to get away from it, they're giving up 123 yards per game on the ground this year. They're giving up 4.5 yards per carry on the ground this year. So this has not been a good run defense. And I think if the Bucs can, I don't know how, again, I'm not saying run a lot if you're the Bucs. I just think that they have a lot more in the arrows in the quiver to find success in the run game than they have in the past.
And I agree. And I think that you look at guys like Lorenzo Carter, Azeez Ojulari, those are some edge guys that Ojulari's got 5.5 sacks. He's an undersized pass rusher. That's what he was at Georgia. He has not put on much weight. And I think that teams, if they can get to the outside, they like to run at him because he's just not that stout against the run. And so I agree, John. I think this is the game where you really try to get to the edge with some zone concepts and turn the corner. And this is going to be a big game for Chris Godwin, for Tyler Johnson in the slot, being that kind of that point of attack run guy that can seal a linebacker and help Leonard Fournette get to the edge and get maybe a 10-yard run. I mean that I think is there for the taking against this.
Right.
And I just hope that they don't waste plays by running inside.
I hope they don't do. We'll see.
Or you know what? Like I'd love to see a counter, right? I wish the Bucs ran more counter because
they have a little bit more recently, but
this is one of those games I think where some counter action upfronted by the offensive line could have some good yields in the run game.
Yeah, for sure. Brian Shaw says Brady misses Evans a lot. I mean, last year was Evans' highest catch percentage of his career. Number of targets converted into catches, the best percentage of his career. So Brady misses Evans less than any quarterback he has ever played with in his life. So keep that in mind, maybe, Brian, when you're coming with that.
Interesting comment.
Statistically, it just isn't true.
Yeah. Interesting comment here by Tony Saylor. Washington football team is coming off a bye. And now the Giants are coming off a bye. Bucs going to get out coached again. I hope that's not the case. Don't think that's going to be the case. But
Giants are pretty bad coaching staff. That would be bad.
Yeah, it would be bad.
But hey, listen, I'm not sure it didn't happen last year. Let's talk about Underdog Fantasy, a little bit of positivity in your life here. Right now, Underdog Fantasy is doing some amazing stuff. They're doubling your first deposit with the promo code PEWTER, PEWTER. You could sign up for Underdog Fantasy right now. Up to $100, they're going to double your first deposit. So you put in $10. You say, okay, I just want to play with $10. I want to do some of these player prop bets. Right now with these player prop bets, you pick 2 correct. You can triple your money, just over under on player stat lines. Brady, 306.5 passing yards, in this game, like over under. And if you're right, you get it correct. And if you get 2 of those correct, you can triple your money. If you get a pick 5 correct, you win 20 times the amount of money you enter with. You can win a lot of money doing this. It's simple. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com, download the app, sign up with this promo code PEWTER, PEWTER. You can build this pick 'em slip in seconds. And what they're going to do when you do sign up and when you do this, they're just going to give you whatever you put in. So if you just want to play with $10, they'll give you 10 and you'll have 20 to play with. And you have all those opportunities to go, triple your 20 times, you win 20 times your amount of money that you put in, and they're giving you $10 to play with. So you don't even have to play with any of your own money if you don't want to. You can just play with theirs, but you can keep going once you start winning and build it up. If you want to put in $50, they'll match it. If you want to put in $100, they'll give you $100 and you can get up to $200. So it's a great deal. Enter that promo code PEWTER and get busy with Underdog Fantasy, winning yourself some money today.
So John, here's the great thing. These are two different companies, two different ways you can play and win and double your money. And I say that because MyBookie has the same type of thing, but it's a different concept because you bet on the games with point spreads and money lines, and this is a sports book. They're the official sports book of pewterreport.com and have been for years. From all the biggest games to the smallest events, make every bet worth your while at MyBookie. Start by doubling your first deposit instantly with MyBookie's first deposit bonus. Double your money before you even place a bet. And all you have to do is sign up and deposit using the exclusive promo code Pewter at MyBookie. There are tons of great games and prop bets to take advantage of this week, but let me point you in the right direction for your first wager. This Sunday, two powerhouse offenses meet when the resurgent Kansas City Chiefs take on the Dallas Cowboys. Them boys have been on a tear this season while the Chiefs continue to struggle but bounce back with a win over Las Vegas. Take the Cowboys to cover the spread so you can walk away with the bread at MyBookie. Don't wait any longer. Head over to MyBookie today to redeem your double deposit bonus so you can get in the game and start winning big today. That's promo code Pewter to receive double your first deposit instantly in your account. No hassle, no wait. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
Love it. Great stuff from MyBookie. Okay, let's talk about this Bucs offensive approach. The Giants defense, unlike their offense, has actually played better recently. You mentioned it, Scott. They were pretty much trash to start the season. There's really no way around it. People thought Patrick Graham was going to be the next big thing in the head coaching circles, and they gave up 27 to the Broncos. They gave up 30 to Washington. They gave up just 17 to Atlanta, but lost that game as well. They gave up 27 to the Saints. That was a rough offense to start the year. Then 44 to the Cowboys, 38 to the Rams. Both of those games, they just got worked. I mean, just worked in those games. Yeah. Then they've bounced back a little bit. Again, bad quarterback play for the Panthers was a big part of that, right? Like the 25-3 game, I don't think offensively, let me just double check here, but offensively, I don't think this was any type of barn burner game. For the Giants. The Panthers were 2 of 15 on third down in this game, had 173 yards of offense. The Giants just went over 300 yards of offense, 302 yards. But this game was about Sam Darnold being unwatchable. He had one of the lowest PFF grades of the year, I believe, in this game. Then they come out, though, and they play tough against the Chiefs, who obviously were floundering and still trying to find their way at that point. But an encouraging game. Again, let the Raiders kind of move the ball over them, but held strong in the red zone, 1 for 6. Obviously, great performance there. In the red area on the season, they are the 6th best red zone defense in the NFL right now. We know that stat can be a little bit fickle and fluid. That's where they're at right now, though. Better than the Bucs by a couple spots. And so this is a defense that I still think is well coached. I do think Patrick Graham's a good coach. I think there's really just been a personnel thing, right? Like figuring out who your guys are, the edge rushers. Who are your guys as edge rushers? That's been a whole adventure for the Giants. They just have not been able to.
Ojulari and Carter, and Ojulari's had some production getting to the quarterback, and Carter really hasn't.
Right. Carter, I think they really thought was going to take that other leap. O'Shane Ximenez, I think they hoped would make that leap. He just hasn't. And neither of those guys have made any type of a leap. But, Ojulari's been tough.
You know, Quincy Roche is a player they picked up as a depth piece. He's got 1 sack this year.
Steeler.
Ex-Steeler. I liked him at Miami. Didn't know how effective he'd be. I just think he's a great college player, but I just don't know if he has the skill set to really make an impact on a regular basis. But John, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the pass rush inside too. Like that's one thing that they haven't really been able. They lost BJ Hill. He's playing great for the Giants now, and they had a bunch of bodies in there, so it should have been okay, but. It really hasn't. I mean, it hasn't been a lot from Dexter Lawrence in that regard. Austin Johnson, Williams, a couple sacks for those guys, but it's mainly Leonard Williams, and he's obviously a good player, and he'll be a handful for them because he'll move around a little bit and he'll play outside too. And Bowles knows him really well. Obviously, was his coach when he drafted him, but so I'm sure he'll share the insights that he has. But the other thing with Williams though is it comes and it goes. It's not always. The motor isn't always burning as hot from start to finish as it is with some of these other guys, like a John Allen last week for Washington, who's just an absolute frenetic pace player. That's not always Williams. So you got to get him.
Against Marpet. Williams got a sack last year against the Bucs. I want to say it was against Ryan Jensen, I think.
He did get a sack. It might have been Jensen. I can't even remember. But, it was either. He usually is over that side, over the Marpet Jensen side. Which is good news for the Bucs, I think. Let's see this season if he's moved around.
At least Pro Football Focus, when I looked, and I should have just gone back to the tape, Marpet had 0 sacks that game, so I'm assuming it was Jensen. No, it wasn't Kappa. Kappa didn't give up a sack that year. But the the thing is
he's played pretty much exclusively on the right side, by the way.
Yeah, correct. And listen, Ali Marpet needs a bounce back game. He didn't have a great start to that Washington game. It's strong to finish in the second half, but I think he's going to be raring to go. The interesting thing, John, is for the second straight week, you look at the Giants' inside linebackers in this 3-4 scheme, and Reggie Ragland, not much to write home about. The same with Tay Crowder. I think it's a weakness. Now, at the same time, we thought the exact same thing about Washington's linebacking core. I even said it was as bad as Kansas City's. Cole Holcomb, who was one of my matchups to watch against Leonard Fournette, Holcomb had a great game. I mean, he had a really good game against Tampa Bay. So as much as I want to say this should be a game where the Bucs can take advantage of that underwhelming inside linebacker crew, whatever you want to call them, you gotta show up on Monday to play. But I think that's an area where the Buccaneers can exploit some things. And you know what? If they had Gronk this game, I think Gronk could have a big game against the Giants. He did last year. He had a touchdown against New York.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. The thing I'll add here is that Washington had athletic freaks for linebackers who can do a lot of stuff if they're starting to click. Correct. They're just young. That's not the case with New York. Like, no, these guys are just. I mean, I watched Tay Crowder play against the Chiefs, and I was like, this dude might be the worst linebacker in the league. So I don't know. This year I see his PFF grade actually now, and he has a 28.7 and a 29.3 in run defense, and he's out here leading their linebacker room in snaps. And he has a 31.9 grade in coverage. So absolutely, these are the guys you attack. There's no question about it. Again, this has to be a heavy play action game. Reggie Ragland is a thumper. He wants to come downhill. Yep. He wants to hit and wrap. That's how he wants to play. If you get him in coverage, if you get Tay Crowder in coverage, you can expose these guys, attack the middle of the field. But you got to use play action.
Howard game, John. It should be an OJ Howard game, right?
Should be Chris Godwin game. Should be a game where everybody can get going. Honestly, like. The way they're using Mike Evans now, playing him inside more, and he's starting to adjust better to that role. I just think anybody can now. Like, obviously if Antonio Brown plays, he can be a factor as well. So we'll see with those guys. The Giants haven't given up a ton of 40+ air yard play, like down the field, 40+ yard passing plays. Just 3 this season. Bucs have given up just 2. So both these teams aren't giving up the 40+ yarders. They're near the top of defensively across the league in that area. But the Giants, giving up. This is going to be an interesting matchup actually in general, because the Giants have given up 20+ yard pass plays this season, which is 10th best. They're pretty good at limiting big plays for opponents. Yeah. And the Bucs obviously are kind of the same thing. They've given up a few more 20+ yarders, but overall, if you look the average depth of target, so the average depth from the target from the line of scrimmage against the Bucs and Giants defenses is very low. For the Bucs, 6.5 yards past the line of scrimmage. We know they've been dinked and dunked on all season. It's killed them because they're a spot dropping team. It's so reminiscent to me of watching Dick LeBeau's Steelers for years. Once the league figured out spot dropping and just started throwing it to, LeBeau wanted to blitz everybody and just spot drop. It's Bulls is the same exact way. I hate it, but that's, so teams are just getting the ball out underneath against the Bucs at a very high rate because they know where the defenders are going to be. And the Giants, again, 7.2 yards, so they're also trying to limit stuff and keep stuff in front of them. So everybody's going to play the Bucs that way. Like, this is going to be a little bit, it's going to be, everybody's going to say, oh, why isn't Brady throwing the ball deep? But the question they need to be asking is, and honestly, the Bucs coaching staff has adjusted and done a good job of it so far. But the Washington game, they had trouble a little bit. And so we got to watch for it now. The Bucs are still, 43 passing plays of 20 yards or more. They're up at the top for 40+ yard passing plays, 20. They've still found splash plays and explosive plays offensively at one of the highest rates in the league. So it's not a concern yet. It's just something like, if every team is going to drop out and take away deep balls against you, you have to win in the intermediate areas of the field. True. You have to create conflict on linebackers in the intermediate arears of the field. You can use play action to do that. You can use route concepts.
Play action.
That sounds
fun, John.
Yeah, you can put fun. You could put, when Antonio Brown's back, you can make him the number, go trips to one side and a silver receiver to the other. Put Antonio Brown as the number 3, the most innermost receiver on that side. Get him matched up with linebackers and safeties. You can do those kind of things. You can run the ball once you spread teams out, and you get them if they're playing 2 high safeties all the time, and they're going to give you a light box. You can run the ball a little bit more and force them out of it. There's lots of things you can do. The Bucs just have to do them and not do what Arians always wants to do, which is go deep. You can't. If the defense is taking that away, they're giving you something else.
Right.
You can't bang your head against the wall all game.
And I'll tell you what, you and I, we kind of trashed the Washington pass defense, the secondary, and it really showed up big time on film. Buck fans, if you didn't have a chance to watch the Monday podcast, which was John and Paul doing the all 22 breakdown, go back and watch it. I know it's an hour and a half. Listen, it's worth every minute because there's so much detail about this Bucs offense, not just the Washington game, but you will have a much better understanding of the whys and the hows of what the Bucs offense does, the good and the bad. And I think that it was a fantastic video. It's really kind of one of a kind. We'll do more of those. We're going to do, John and I talked, we're going to do some shorter, like breaking down certain plays. But I mean, just to go back to that loss and kind of explain just about play by play, not all the plays, but most of the plays, the hows and the whys of what happened. It is just a great, I was going to say football 101, but this is like really some advanced stuff. It's a really good breakdown that you and Paul did. So
there's not many people out there that know the Bucs offense like Paul knows the Bucs offense inside out. He studied Bruce Arians playbooks for years. He studied Tom Brady for years. So like he is just kind of, he's a perfect person. He's great insight. And honestly, if you're into it and you love that show and you love the stuff that Paul brings, he's going to be doing more stuff, I believe, on our YouTube channel here coming up soon. But he's going to be on with me Monday night. We got a live show going.
That's right.
And we're going to have our pregame at 7:30 like we normally do. And the kickoff's 8:20, 8:25, 8:30, whenever they end up getting around to it. And when that ball's kicked off, Paul and I are going to be with you all night, Monday night. Very similar to the Manning cast. You might have to make a tough. Is the Manning cast on? I don't even know if they're on for this week, but you're going to have to make a tough decision between us and the Manning cast maybe. But Paul and I will be breaking down everything as we watch it, doing play-by-play, X's and O's, scheme analysis, player analysis, all that stuff during the actual game throughout all 4 quarters. So there'll be a lot of insight to be gleaned there, and we'll be looking back at some things and trying to give you our best thoughts and analysis from the game as well.
Speaking of Computer Report TV on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe. And
if you're watching right now,
6,000.
Yes, we are. What are we, like 50 away?
Something like
less than 50, something like that. We're really close. So try and hit subscribe, get some other people to subscribe, and also if you're watching the videos from now, and if you hit those thumbs up, thumbs up on our video, just literally just click that while you're watching. That's a huge help to us and boosts us up on YouTube and helps us get in front of more eyes and more people trying to grow this thing out. If we can keep growing this thing and we keep getting these good attendance and everything like that for these shows, that's when we're like, okay, we go to our boss and we're like, okay, let's put more money into YouTube because it's growing, and we'll give you more
content for you Bucs fans.
Exactly. So you guys have been great. It's been terrific so far, honestly. This game, we're getting to that point, Scott, where we need to kind of identify kind of what's going on in this game. Like, we need to put our money where our mouth is and make some predictions here. And I know some people believe that I'm not going to pick the Bucs this week. Can you believe that?
Wow, this can be interesting to see what you do.
Scott?
But John, the great thing is you mentioned money, and there's only one place to turn with your money. If you're not placing bets, if you want something a little bit more safe and more return for your investment, leave it to our friends at Immuni Financial.
At Immuni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Dude,
congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you? Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. Immuni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
John, let's get to Colorado, man. Let's do it. Managing your family's wealth means more to Immuni Financial than simply allocating your assets. It means legacy planning, brokerage and advisory services, retirement accounts, and if you're like me, with 4 teenagers, college savings accounts, and insurance services with over 40 years of experience in the Tampa Bay area. Let Immuni Financial help you plan ahead and stay ahead. Call Immuni Financial at 1-800-868-6864 or visit them, like I did, at immuni.com. And folks, I have a good chunk of my retirements with Immuni Financial, so I trust them, and I want you to give them a call and talk to David, talk to Mark, talk to everybody over there, and see what you think, and see if it's the right place to do your investments. I think you'll find it is.
Tony asked if Paul or I have any coaching or scouting experience. No, I coached high school ball for a couple of years, Tony. Just as a line coach, offensive, defensive line coach, and scouting.
Which one do you like better, John?
Actually, I liked coaching defensive line much better. No question about it. Yeah, my biggest strength was teaching pass rushers because it's the I've studied. Tony asked about scouting. I've studied that position like crazy, just body movement and what's important to have at that position and all that kind of stuff. So, just mainly self-taught stuff in terms of scouting. I mean, I've definitely had conversations to learn from a lot of people who do it as a profession. I'm not sure about Paul. I mean, the dude reads like a maniac. It's insane. I mean, his memory's like photographic too.
Yeah.
He's probably the most intelligent people I've ever met. Yeah. So
especially at the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Passing game is
it's bad for me because it's like I took a accounting or not accounting. Oh God, I just had a bad dream with accounting. Took an advertising class in college as a public relations major, and you know the old saying, it's like if you take an advertising class, you'll never watch television commercials or see ads the same, because you can have that knowledge, inside scoop on what they're trying to accomplish with these ads. And I played defensive line in high school for a couple of years. I've always loved defensive line. Yep. You know, coached Pop Warner. I've gone to coaching clinics, the high school level, college level. I've had some of the Bucs defensive coaches give me some private film sessions. Joe Cullen, Greg Schiano over at Greg's house was kind enough to really show me a lot of defense, and I just love that part of it. So it's weird. Like when I watch some film, I always look at it from the defensive perspective, because I hate offense. I'm going to say it. But listening to Paul and you on the podcast and talk about the offensive concepts that Bruce Arians likes to run and what Tom Brady likes to do is so educational for me to really kind of see it and hear it from an offensive perspective.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I'm excited to do more of those things for sure. But you know what? Another thing I'm excited about, Scott, we don't have a graphic for this, but the Leonard segment is basically gone because we just haven't had much to talk about. Leonard hasn't made any mistakes, and Rojo, he's not playing. So the Ronald segment, we haven't been able to really do that either. He had one snap in the last game. I didn't even notice that he played. I still haven't found the snap, actually. So I don't know when he got in the field, but we just haven't been able. But there might be a new segment, Scott, because Jamel Dean is that dude on defense, right? Like, just you never know when it's going to happen.
What are you doing?
It's going to be epic when he does something. You're like, this play, okay, situation 3rd and 14. They're at the Tampa Bay 39-yard line. I wrote about it today in Bucs Briefing if you read my column. I mean, he has it. The Bucs call it perfectly, dude. Like Todd Bowles had the perfect play. Blitz Winfield off the edge. Heineke didn't see him step. He was off the slot, I should say. Heineke wasn't expecting him to blitz. Winfield timed it perfectly. They didn't shift the protection, so he comes in unaccounted for. Heineke has to get the ball out because it's his responsibility since he didn't shift the protection. Winfield comes flying in. Heineke has to get the ball out. Check down on 3rd and 14. Jamel Dean reads it perfectly, comes right up in the flat.
John, let me
absolutely
ask you a
should make this tackle
for
1 to 2 yard gain.
Before you play it, hold on. Let me ask you a question. How many players are there on defense?
There's 11.
12. There's 12 on defense because you have the sidelines. The sidelines is always your 12th man on defense. Okay,
so nobody told Jamel Dean because on 3rd and 11, this dude came up and
what to the sidelines? Oh, God. Oh man! Oh, show it again.
Controller break, like functioned. What is that?
Get him out of bounds. Get him out of bounds.
But that's the thing. He just has a lot like these random occurrences of like where his instincts just it's like he's never been on a football field before. Like there's no other way to put it. Like it's just those kind of situations where it's just like all of a sudden like where am I? Like it's that like that's what it's like.
Oh my!
Todd say just show clips of Van Traub getting Todd,
what are you doing?
JTS dropping
into coverage.
Oh your first round pick, Todd. He rushes the passer, Todd. He's an edge rusher. He's not in safety. But yeah, Jamel Dean, man, that was the malfunction of the year. That turned, by the way, a 3rd and 11 into a 3rd and 3 or 4, or 4th and 3 or 4. Yeah. And they were in field goal range. They could have kicked a 45-yarder, but they also had the option to go for it then because of Dean's mistake. And so they went for it. They got it. They ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive. Obviously, it's just a massive play in the game. Would have been probably no points. Probably would have been a punt. It would have been a long field goal with their 3rd kicker.
Coaches talk about hidden yardage, little things like that. It's not just special teams flipping the field. It's plays like that. That's hidden yardage right there.
And when people go at the end of a game and they react and say, fire this guy, just remember, football games come down to a couple of plays like that almost all the time. Especially
and that always in
when
the
it's
fourth
like
quarter.
A game like this where, the upset happens.
Yeah.
So just remember those plays being a big part of it. Not saying coaches and everything don't deserve blame too, but little plays like that change the whole outcome of the game. But Brian Chavita is an elite ball hawk.
We haven't
sure,
seen it quite yet. Have not seen any interceptions from Vita Vea yet.
Yeah, he has had good coverage a couple times. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
He just drops out and the running back's checking down underneath and he literally just like lays on the guy's back. It's pretty impressive.
Yep.
No way anybody's throwing the ball there, but it's pretty impressive. So, okay, it's time now. We got to give our predictions for this game. Bucs against Giants. What do you think happens on Monday Night Football, Scott?
Oh, man.
You're actually thinking about picking the Giants here, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
Wow. Keep this in mind, by the way, grateful listeners. Scott said at the beginning of the year the Bucs were going to be 13-4, and he had them at the lowest record of any of us at PFF.
I got chewed out on Twitter.
At Pewter Report.
Yeah.
But you have not picked them to lose any week on the show or any
That's right.
week in our previews and predictions.
I've been a believer. I have.
You've been a believer despite the record.
I have. Listen, hey, I even tweeted out at halftime. I said the Bucs were down 17-0 in Atlanta, right? And they came back to win. I fully expected the Bucs to come back to win that game until the defense couldn't get off the field. Yeah. I just expected Tom Brady to lean it back. I did.
I mean, that last drive was unreal to me to watch. I was just like,
it was embarrassing. I've never seen anything like it.
That was, it was pathetic.
Okay, so I will not go off on a long-winded, boring comment here. Sorry, Kim. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. The Bucs are going to win at home because they're the better team. They play better at home. It's going to be a close game. I thought the Washington game was going to be close. I think I predicted 26-20 or something at Washington. I think that's what my score was. It was the closest out of all of them. Y'all were predicting like blowouts. I didn't think that at all.
I mean,
this is going to be a close game. Yeah.
This one's going to be close. So what do you think?
He's 28-22. I think they hit 30. I'm going to say 30-23. I think they'd win by 7.
Okay. I think it's 27-22. Bucs win.
Score 30 at home?
No, don't score 30 at home.
Oh, wow.
Giants defense is playing better. Bucs at night. We'll see.
That's true. Hey, listen to John, there's something to that. I'm going to get a little longer.
Maybe.
Here.
I don't know. I mean, they were night in the playoffs. They were night in the Super Bowl. They played best game. One of the best games
this year,
in memory.
31-29 at home against the Cowboys on Thursday Night Football.
Looked amazing that game other than the fumbles.
Right. 19-17, though, against the Patriots on the road. That was Sunday Night Football. Thursday Night Football, 28-22, right? So they have not played like tremendously well in primetime. They've played well enough to win all 3 of those games, but they've been very close games. So.
Right. I think they win 27-22. I think that Daniel Jones driving for a touchdown late in the game with a chance to win it. And Levante David, who dropped an interception last year on the Giants winning or almost game tying drive, dropped one right in his gut. I think he gets one. I think he gets his first pick of the year in this one.
Okay.
So that's how I see it. But I'll add this too. I said on Twitter that the Bucs were frauds right now because of the way that they were playing recently after they lost to Washington. To me, I don't know whether this, you can't lose to Trevor Siemian and Taylor Heineke in back-to-back weeks. The way that the Bucs lost, or not back-to-back weeks, twice in 3 weeks with the bye in back-to-back games. The way that they lost, that has already been an issue this year. It's not like penalties and it was the first game, penalties and mistakes and drops and all that kind of stuff plagued them. No, it wasn't. And so you can't do that back-to-back games as a team that's supposed to be your veterans are doing that kind of stuff. Like that to me is an issue. That's something that like, if it happens once, okay, it happens once. You do it twice with a bye to get everything right in between. Yeah. Like you're not a Super Bowl contending team. You wrote as much this week. Not right now. Neither of us have ever said that they won't be at any point this season, that they don't have that ability. That's a different story. If we felt that way, we'd say it.
Is not a Super Bowl contender.
The way
they
that
have
they're
to
playing,
evolve, change, grow, improve, get better for them.
The Bears game was great, but letting the Eagles come all the way back with that pathetic team, like that's not. They're a bunch of teams that don't have great offenses and don't have great quarterbacks right now are taking it to you way too often, and they're not putting up 40. I'm not saying that, but when you get against the good ones, they're going to put up 40. And I know there's the caveat that the Bucs need to get healthy. I'll allow it. I don't know how much Sean Murphy-Bunting changes things, but Carlton Davis will change things for sure. And when he returns, I think that helps. But how much? This has been an issue with Bulls. If he didn't have those 2-3 games, maybe if you want to count the Packers game in the playoffs, we'd all be singing a much different tune about Todd Bowles at this point. So I don't really trust that side of the ball.
Todd Bowles
Bucs offense is great.
Or Sean Murphy-Bunting?
Oh, well, both.
Right?
Yeah, both. I do trust the Bucs offense to get some things figured out and play better. But so I think they'll win, but I don't know that it'll be the most dominant. I just think defensively this team has some issues right now, and we'll see who plays. But hopefully they prove me wrong and they come out and have a dominant performance.
And listen,
that's what they're capable
the
of.
thing is, the Giants' strength is their secondary. All right, you've got a guy in Logan Ryan who knows Tom Brady. He went up against him for years in practice, right? And so you've got Logan Ryan, you've got Xavier McKinney, the other safety. Those guys are playing well. James Bradbury has fared well against Mike Evans in the past. Dory Jackson. That's a pretty good quartet of guys, and the linebacking play is suspect, but so are the edge rushers. But I think the strength is their secondary, and without AB, we're not seeing guys that can consistently separate. I'm going to give a pass to Chris Godwin at a gimpy foot. I think Mike Evans did a pretty good job. You have to give Mike the ball more. Speaking of more, we appreciate more money from William Butler.
Yeah,
who always comes through with the super chat. Thank you.
We don't have any updates, William, here yet. Arians said maybe tomorrow once he sees him move around. He said Gronk looked fine today, but we'll just have to see. As the week goes on, we'll get updates on all these guys. We'll get them up for you on the site right away, we always do. So we'll see about that one. Last thing I'll say here, and then we got to close it out. I know because we got to get out of here, but I think that last week the Bills, or 2 weeks ago, the Bills and the Cowboys, who were two of the best teams in the NFL, had really embarrassing losses. Like the Cowboys got crushed. Like they were down 30-0. They scored two late touchdowns that were meaningless by the Broncos.
What happened the next week?
That was one of the most embarrassing losses of the year by any team, no question. But the Cowboys had played great. Like they had lost to the Bucs on that last second field goal. That was it up until that point. They beat everybody else. I know they hadn't played like the toughest schedule, but they were crushing some people. Like they were scoring. They beat the Patriots and the Chargers, and they beat some good teams. They lost that game. Super disappointing. They played horrible on offense. Couldn't get anything going at all. Then they come out and they absolutely destroyed Atlanta, who was playing better at that point. Atlanta, I've never bought into the Atlanta hype, but they were playing better at that point, and they just wrecked them. I mean, 43-3. It was 36, nothing at halftime. Yeah. It was complete and utter destruction. It was one of the best teams in the NFL type of performance, pass rush, coverage, everything. That was the response to a disappointing loss. Bills, horrible game against Jacksonville, like unbelievably laughable loss. We made fun of it on this pod like crazy, just like we made fun of the Bucs loss to Washington. 9-6, they lose. They come out. Took them a little while to get going. They destroy the Jets, right? Yeah. Like, or was it? It was the Jets, right?
Yeah, it was the Jets. Yeah,
who was a bad team? The Giants are a bad team. They're a bad team. They're maybe not as bad as the Jets, but they're pretty bad. The Jets are good teams.
The Bucs have the capability with how the defense is played at home, how the offense is played at home. If they flip the on switch, like, hey, we're home, let's turn on the lights. If they do that, they can have another blowout type win. They can do that. They're capable of doing that.
Yeah, if they're on the level of the Bills and the Cowboys and the Packers. And you want to put the Cardinals in there. It's been a while since we've seen them at full strength. You want to put the Cardinals in there. If they're on that level, they come out and they dominate this football game. They don't screw around. They don't barely win the game at the end. And there's no fluky stuff like last year. If they're a dominant football team right now, doesn't mean they couldn't be one in week 17.
Right.
But they don't, week 18 or whatever. But if they're one right now, if they're not frauds right now, they go out and they win by 25, 30, 24, 30 points. That's what happens if they're that kind of team. So we'll see what they're made of. That's how great teams respond after. I mean, it's crazy to say, but it's been almost a month. It'll be a month since the Bucs, by the time they play the Giants, since they won a football game because of the bye, obviously, and the weird schedule. But that'll be where we're at basically with their games, and that's a long time to go. So you cannot lose this football game. It is absolutely a must-win game, and they need to do it, and not just do it, but they need to do it really well, I think, to make it count. So here we go. We're wrapping it up. Tomorrow we'll be back on the podcast. Don't know who's going to be on or don't know what we're going to be talking about. So it's a mystery pod. Make sure you come on and check it out and find out what's going on. Your boys reporting for jury duty tomorrow. So everything's up in the air. We got to see how this thing goes. But Pewter Game Day Show obviously is going to be Monday as well, 7:30 p.m. pregame and 8:20 for the start of the game. Paul and I will be with you. We'll take you throughout the game. And then we'll still have the post-game podcast later that night, wrap everything up and put a bow on it for you as well. So as always, thanks so much for listening for everybody, and we appreciate y'all, and we'll see you again tomorrow on another edition of the Pewter Report podcast.